Hello, and welcome to Word of Truth Podcast. Our mission is to shine the light of biblical truth on the questions of life. Hosted by Stephen Brown and Stone Anderson. Enjoy the show.
Sanctify them through thy truth. Thy word is true. Yeah. Sanctify them through thy truth. Thy word is true. Yeah. Word of truth.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of Word vs. World. I'm here with your host, Stephen Brown.
Hello.
And I am Stone Anderson, your faithful co-host. Today we got a good subject, and Stephen, you might as well put on your boxing gloves because this one's going to fire people up.
Yeah.
Homeschooling. Is it right? Is it wrong? Stephen, what are your thoughts on homeschooling?
Well, the first, is it right or is it wrong? Well,
the only reason I said that, this is Word versus World. The world hates, capital hates, homeschooling. Half the people watching are like, I bet he was homeschooled, and I bet you money he don't even know what capital letters are. No,
I do know that you're telling the truth. I won't say the world, but I'll say the United States for sure. A huge majority of the people in the United States have a totally derogatory opinion, a negative opinion about homeschooling. I remember, if I'm not mistaken, it was Hillary Clinton. One time, this was I think a video clip from probably 20 years ago, but she was basically equating homeschool to abuse and wanting to make it illegal at that point in all 50 states and all this kind of stuff. And so, yeah, the world definitely, or our country, it's one of these issues, Stone, that everybody's got an opinion about it. And very few people are just like neutral, They're either lovers or haters of it, And of course, that's the kind of topics it seems like we deal with here. So, is it right? That's what you said. Is it right? Well,
is it a better option? Let me word it like that. To public schooling. I know what you're saying. I know what you know. Well, I know what you think, but they don't. So that's why I asked it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, those two questions, I feel like are still poorly framing the argument. That it's so much more than that. The question is not only is it right or wrong or is it better? As soon as I say it, yeah, here go the gloves, I guess. Is it best? Yes, there's no doubt about it. It's best. It is the best option, period, hands down. I don't care who says what about it. I'll die happily knowing that what I have just said is true. Homeschooling is the best option. We'll get into it, we're going to unpack it and all that. Is there situations in which it's not best for this particular person in this particular time frame and all of that? Well, that's not what we're talking about as an introduction. What we're talking about is the general rule of thumb, the majority of the cases. Is homeschooling right or whatever? No, it's more than that. It should be law the other way. That if you at all possibly can homeschool your children, that should be what you do. Well, I won't say it should be law because law should never even get into areas like this. And I know we've made a huge claim, and we need to support that claim. Before we get into it, you were homeschooled.
Yes, I was.
What is your overall opinion about homeschooling?
I'm 100% a supporter of homeschooling. I wasn't stuck in a classroom. I don't even really know how long they're in there, 7-8 hours a day on the bus and all that. But I feel like I got a good education. I may not be the best at presenting things. People watch me struggling here all the time. But I feel like I got a good education. I really enjoyed it. I had more time to take things on a hands-on way instead of just reading about it in a textbook.
Yeah. Yeah, and the fact that sometimes, you might struggle for words, that's common for everybody. I mean, put anyone on camera and ask them questions on the spot like I do to you all the time. And even the most intelligent out there will struggle with it. I don't think that has anything to do with your intelligence. And, I've seen you, I worked with you for a year on the job that you're at. And then also you come and worked with me on some other jobs. And, you play music here at the church and you do all kinds of stuff. And your level, your IQ is off the charts. You're a very intelligent young man. So I guess really, man, what it comes down to, well, all right, why? I suspect, based on what you've said and what I know of you, you're going to homeschool your children when you have children.
Yes, I will. We don't really know what the future is going to be like.
Right.
But if at 100%, if at all possible, yes. Even if I have to move to a different country.
Okay, why? And take all the time you want and tell the world why you would homeschool your kids. Every possible reason you can think of.
Well, I look at parenting as more than just providing food, water, and shelter for kids. That's a huge part. But it's also, the Bible says, train up a child in the way he should go, and when he was old, he will not depart from it. So it's our job to train them in the way they should go. If I'm sending him off to public school for 7-8 hours a day, I'm not training him. I'm not his teacher anymore. So I can't expect church on Sunday and even Wednesday night to be any competitor to the 30, 40 hours a week he's at public school, filling his mind with all the gender garbage, evolution, that God is not real. That's what evolution teaches also. But there's some things that they teach in some schools now that I'm not even going to say on camera. It's just too.
Yeah.
It's just too. Don't even want to talk about it. Also, I'll go back to what I was saying. It's our job to. I really like how it used to be the dad would teach the young men, or the father would teach his sons how to build, how to plant a farm, how to trap, how to hunt in the woods, teaching them skills they needed for life. The mother would teach her daughters how to cook, sew, clean, do chores around the house. I'm thinking in my mind, I'm picturing Laura Ingalls type days. Mm-hmm. But nowadays, and I know it's different. Men go off and work 40 hours a week. A lot of times the women are also going off and working. So school, it almost a lot of times seems like a babysitting, was a daycare. It's like a daycare kind of for any age. It's an indoctrination daycare. Mm-hmm. I just don't like the thought of God giving me these children, which I don't have children yet, but right. I will.
Yeah, I got you.
And I only imagine my convictions will become exponentially stronger when I actually have kids. But God gave me these kids. He didn't give them to the public school system, to the teachers. The trouble kids get into at public school is just crazy. Even sports. I've watched people go from being more humble people. They go start playing sports, and next thing you know, in 2 years, they're cocky and they're all just, it's not something I think kids should be involved in because it's obviously not healthy.
Yeah. I agree with everything that you've said. Everything. I think everything that you've said could be unfolded and explained. But to me, that's why I asked you. The heart of this issue comes down to something that's so much bigger that honestly, just to be brutally honest, a huge majority of the world couldn't see it if you held it in front of their face and lit it up with a neon sign and shook it. They still wouldn't see because they don't have, well, like the Bible says, that the natural man does not understand the things of the Spirit, nor can he, because they are spiritually discerned. And so the question of public school, what we call public school, should really, it is public school, but let's put it more in a right framework. It's a government, state-run school. Your local teachers do not decide what books they teach. They do not decide what marks they must hit. They do not decide the curriculum, even though I have great friends that are teachers and really good quality people. I won't name them for their own sake because this is going to be the most hated podcast.
Good Christians, too.
Yeah, really, that's what I'm saying. Really good Christian folks that come here to my house. We have dinner together. They came to church with me for a while. I have several friends that are teachers. And, I mean, exceptionally good teachers. And even they themselves, well, the one in particular that I can think of, probably sort of the highest ranking public school person that I know of, said he would homeschool his own children, that it's better and it's preferable. And so all of that aside, all I'm saying is the issue, to me, okay, I'm a father of 8 children. We homeschool our children. And that's one of those things, man, that's just one of those hills that I'll probably end up having to die on because our youngest is still a newborn, basically. She's 6 months old. And by the time she's 17 or 18, somewhere between now and then, it wouldn't surprise me if they made it against the law again to homeschool. And what will I do at that point? I'll pray about it when the time comes. I don't know. But I personally went to public school. I homeschooled 1 year of my life. I homeschooled in the 9th grade, but all the rest of the time I spent in public school. Did I have good experiences there? Yeah, I sure did. But I also know for a fact that some of the worst things that I was ever exposed to came in school.
And also, just on a side note, it's even that kind of thing, your children being exposed to dangerous things of the world. It's not just public schools; it's Christian schools. There's a Christian school down the road in Rainsville. I think it's in Rainsville. And I know someone who said that their teenage boy, the first time he was exposed to pornography was at the Christian school. Yeah. So it's not just...
Yeah, no, it's not just I'll blame the state school for every single thing. It's, yes, when you put a group of 25 to 30 13-year-old boys and girls in one room, and all of their home influences are brought into a giant pool of people here, and you have a teacher who is probably great at teaching grammar or whatever, but doesn't really know how to discern influences that are mixing their way into the children's minds and all of this kind of stuff going on. Yeah, you have... It can be in any sort of group setting like that. And that's why your children should learn from you, at home.
Because also, didn't mean to cut you off, but
also cut me off, yes.
With homeschooling, like something you hear a lot of times is, but homeschooled children, they won't know how to make friends. They won't have anybody to make friends. They won't know how to socialize. That can't be furthest from the truth. Yeah. I did grow up a little bit more shy, partly personality, and partly I probably was because I wasn't exposed to 30. I don't know how many people are exposed to a day at public school, but a bunch of, I wasn't accustomed to it. But as I got older and started working jobs, I'm co-hosting a podcast. Mm-hmm. I talk in church. I work 40 hours a week, and obviously I meet new people all the time. I have a ton of friends. That's just, it couldn't be further from the truth. But the beauty of homeschooling is, it's not that your kids won't know how to socialize. It's you get to pick who they socialize with.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. That's a huge myth, and It's not at all that your kids will be socially awkward. What it is your kids will be socially uncomfortable in inappropriate social situations.
Which is a good thing.
Yeah, that's a good thing. So, yeah, your 16-year-old boy or your 16-year-old girl is going to be very uncomfortable when you take them down to the bowling alley and they see other teenagers sitting around making out or talking about things they shouldn't even be talking about. Yeah, your kid's going to not fit in that crowd. You don't want your kid to fit in that crowd.
If you do, you need to do a little study in your Bible.
Yeah. Well, I flipped the script on that whole. Dude, I've seen it, man. You know, we have church. And we have, I would say, on average, 200 people a month. Now, it's sometimes reoccurring or whatever, but if we just counted every time a person walks through our front door, it's over 200 people a month.
Oh, yeah.
And there are 25 kids, we'll say, that go to church here, and all 25 of them were homeschooled. And we have other community events that we host here, and so we'll have kids coming from all over the community. And I'm telling you right now, I can tell you within an hour if that kid is public schooled or homeschooled, and the most awkward kids out there are the public schooled kids, and there's no doubt about it. You know, the 12-year-old boy that stands off with his hands in his pockets and his hood up on, and he stands off by himself over by a tree out there is the public schooled kid. While the homeschool kids are all running out there playing, having the time of their life.
Making new friends,
being kind. People show up and they'll go out there and help them, say, hey, can I help you carry anything? You mean to hold your hand, walk you up the stairs or whatever. They're really good. I've seen my own grandfather, whom I dearly love and respect, so I do not mean this in any disrespect to him. He has passed on to be with the Lord. But he heavily advised me against homeschooling. And he was afraid of all of those things. They'll be social awkward. They'll be this, that, and the other. And I know, I never got to talk to him again afterwards, but I know that by the time he passed away, which was about two and a half years ago now, he had seen something different in my kids than what he had expected. And so, honestly, I want to get into some other things. There's a lot to unpack. We will not near cover it in one podcast. But the first thing, this is directed toward Christian people. The first thing that I, as a 40-year-old man with 8 children, who is also a preacher at a church with a lot of children, and all of the experiences in life that I've had and all of the things that I've studied and learned, I will tell you right now, the question is really a spiritually centered question. That's the truth. The Bible tells us how to educate our kids. And so if we want to say we're full bore Christians, we're going to follow full strength the biblical model with all of our might, and then whatever ways that we can't or fall short or don't know how, we'll maybe in those areas let the world affect us. There's not a doubt in my mind that the homeschool kid is going to have a better chance at being the biblically schooled kid, is what I'm trying to say. There's no doubt. The Bible tells us when to teach them, how to discipline them, how to continue to teach them. It teaches us what real parenting is. That's another thing. People think of parenting these days as watching over your kids long enough to hand them off to someone else's care while they watch over them for a while. And then
yeah, recently I heard, someone told me what someone else said, but she basically just got her kids married off, and she was like, finally, now I can live my life. And that's the wrong view of parenting.
Yeah. Yeah, I say it all the time. Most parents in America today seem to hate their kids to me. I know that's like, oh my goodness, I can't believe you just said parents hate their kids, but I'm telling you.
Go tell them you got 8 kids and see what you got.
Oh, I know.
Why would you do that to yourself? 8 kids? Yeah, you hear it all.
Yeah, exactly. They're like, how can you stomach it? Why would you do that to yourself? I bet your wife is gray-headed already. And then they look at you like, are you sane? And then they ask you all of the most inappropriate questions and everything. And I want to look at them and be like, did you hate your children? For your response to be that to me, you must have hated your kids. You must have hated raising kids. And here's what it boils down to. They don't know how to raise their kids. That's honestly what it boils down to. Because they have adopted the state model of raising kids, because they have adopted this, they send their kid to public school, they get them back home, they can't control them, they can't contain them, they don't know what to do with them, they can't even get through to them, they can't relate to them, they can't communicate their ideas to them. They're terrified to discipline them because the world has taught you that discipline is wrong or something. And so, yeah, they got kids that you don't want to be around them. But that's not how it doesn't have to be that way, and that's something that people need to realize. There's a totally different paradigm out there. We don't have to go the way of the American school system. But let me say this, and then let's get back to the school thing. But it's just something I thought of while you was talking. I get so sick of hearing, "Well, you're just sheltering them too much."
I was sheltered just a little bit, I'll be honest. And I do believe there's, to a degree, sheltering your kids too much. I knew a guy who said I wasn't allowed to play Hot Wheels too much, like racing. Racing's a sin. So in that sense, you can over-shelter, but you can't over-shelter anybody from the world.
Yeah.
It's just...
Yeah, the Hot Wheels thing, to me, that doesn't even fall under the category of sheltering. I mean, that's illogical. I mean, I was trying to come up with a word I was trying to soften it down because I was in my head calling them all kinds of names, okay? That's illogical. But even still, in that parent's world, I would say that's their child, and it's their God-given responsibility to raise that child the best they know how.
And protect him from sin
exactly.
in the world.
So here's the thing, though, about this idea of, you're sheltering them. You're sheltering them too much. You're sheltering them so much they're not going to know what to do in the world. Well, here's the thing. I do wish that the world wasn't spiritually blind so that they would understand this. But it's like, you take this parent that thinks I'm overly sheltering my children. You take them and let's say their 8-year-old daughter and their 10-year-old son. And you put them on a helicopter and you put parachutes on them. And you fly them over the middle of Afghanistan 2010 or whatever, during the heights of the conflict, where there were probably no less than 500 to 1,000, maybe 2,000 perhaps, I don't know, mortar rounds and shells and stuff falling out of the sky randomly, IEDs on the side of the road, explosive stuff everywhere, drones flying. Just push those out of the helicopter, pull their parachutes, and let that mother land there, or that father, in the middle of a war situation with those kids. And you tell me if she doesn't do this number and put them under her arms and double over them every time she hears a boom. And the first thing she's going to do when she hits ground is look for the most solid building that she can find. She's going to get her kids inside there to the lowest level that they can find in the most, I guess, constricted, the smallest space that she feels like is safe. And that's where she's going to tell them, stay right here. Don't move. Because it's a war zone out there. Right?
But when we do the same thing in the spiritual sense.
Exactly.
Oh, you're sheltering too much.
Yeah, when we look out there, people who have the Spirit of God living in them, and we spend our lives and as best we can to learn of these things, to identify the spiritual bullets and the spiritual bombs and the fiery darts of the wicked, as the Bible says. We see that junk landing, boom, 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 all over the place in our own community. Boom, this church just blew up. Where is it? Don't know. Everybody's gone. What happened? A spiritual thing. Oh, suddenly this family over here, dang, now she's got 2 of the kids and he's got 2 of the kids, and they hate each other. And one of their kids is now dabbling in drugs, and they're constantly asking prayer or whatever, and it's spiritual bombs going off all over the place. And probably more bombs going off in the public school, I'm saying, than any other building in your community. And they wonder why we say, I don't want my kids there. Because at any moment, one of those deadly bombs could land on one of my children, spiritually speaking, and he will be exposed to something, drawn into something, enticed into something, tempted into something.
Or maybe a younger one. I mean, I should know this. But what age do they actually start going to public school? 6 or 8?
No, younger than that, because now they do kindergarten, So, I mean, in preschool. So a kid could be going as early as 4 years old even.
A 4 or 5-year-old dropped into public school. First of all, there's a lot of older guys and girls there. And second of all, there's the teachers. I mean, I just don't trust people until they've proven trustworthy, but it happens all the time. You hear about, oh, this teacher got arrested for sex abuse or molesting a child.
I remember being in 3rd grade. And well, actually, I may have been 2nd grade, but I know for a fact it was either 2nd or 3rd grade, and I know what school it was, and I'm not going to say. But I'll never forget, for whatever reason, this is burned into my mind, a story that a 2nd or 3rd grade little girl, a friend of mine, told me about stuff she's seen at home. And in my little 6-year-old, 7-year-old mind, my mind was just absolutely blown away. So much so that I'm right at 40, and I still remember. I mean, we were sitting at the lunchroom table when she's telling this, and I just was so blown away by everything that she was saying, and it never left me. And, that's a moment in time. I'm just saying, like you're talking about, even a 4-year-old or a 5-year-old. Yes, that can happen. We got to.
Because especially in today's world when there's so many, I guess you could call it gender confusion out there.
Yeah.
And, I mean, I don't know if they probably already have stuck the P on there for pedophiles on the LGBTQ, P plus, all that junk. Because they're already pushing that. Just watch a Netflix show and you'll see it. If the world's pushing it and this person's gotten away with it before, that means if your little kid's in public school, they're possibly the next victim. Mm-hmm. So that's all I was just trying to say. Is that's another reason. But I see what you're saying. You're saying it could be another young child sharing something that you would not want your kid to know about.
Yes, if I would have had the understanding that I needed to tell someone, an adult, what that little girl had told me for her own sake, I have no idea what would have happened to their family. But there she is. She doesn't even know. She doesn't know herself what's going on. And she's telling this story of everything that she experienced. And it was just mind-boggling. And the thing is, that was just one of many. But like I said, we're talking about spiritual things here. And they're saying, well, school's about education. How about you talk about the education? Okay, school is about education. But what I'm trying to tell you is that way more than the sort of material education that your kids get, the reading, arithmetic, geometry, and all that kind of stuff, they're getting a spiritual education at school.
And it's
way more.
Yeah, way more than what.
Yes. And that's the part, that's why that it's so necessary that if you have an option, and don't say, well, I don't have an option because we have to have 2 incomes. I'm telling you, if you love your children and you really believe that the Bible is the Word of God in the right way, then find a way to lose that second income if necessary.
Even if it's a sacrifice,
that's what I'm saying.
It's not worth sacrificing your kids for temporary riches.
That's right. Either sacrifice your materials, so lose the second income. Maybe you have to lose the 2020 Yukon and get a little gas burning 4-cylinder car. So that your husband can make ends meet alone or whatever. But find a way to sacrifice those things, because you are sacrificing your children in a spiritual sense when you send them to the school of Babylon, which is what the whole public school is. I'm not saying, of course, yes, when they get there, sure, they'll learn some math. Well, that's good.
Hey, I learned math at home.
Yeah, you can teach them that at home, and that's another thing. There's just so many things that come to my mind, man. Influence is probably the primary way that a child learns from the time that they are 2 to 3 years old and can be influenced, really, until they're 15, 16, maybe even 17 years old. They learn. That's why peer pressure is so powerful, because influence will have your children doing so much. I mean, you can sit there. I've seen it. I can sit there and try and motivate my son all day long to want to read, and I can make it enticing with all kinds of rewards and all this kind of stuff. But then one of the other little 10-year-old boys...
Hey, you got to check out this book.
Yeah, exactly. One of the other 10-year-old boys from church can come in and be like, oh, man, I've been reading this book and it's awesome. And now suddenly I can't get the book away from my son. It's influence, you know? And so there's just knowing that, knowing that that's the primary way that kids learn and adapt and pick up things. It's so dangerous, man. It's just so dangerous to send them into that situation. Now, let's get off of that for a minute. Talk about the education side of things.
Okay. Well, I mean, first of all, people do learn. People go on and get master's degrees and and crazy amounts of education from public schools. So I'm not saying they can't teach you. But I know people who say, now this is like, I think they live maybe in Atlanta. So a little more than just a small town. But they said that the teacher would be teaching, they'd have headphones in, just be playing on their phone. When it come down and take the test, they'd look at the answers, type it in. Their teacher they don't care because, they pass, you get your paycheck. Not all teachers are like that. I'm not saying that. But I'm saying there's some like that. So the education argument doesn't even always hold up. I could go ask, and they could do the same for me to some degree, but I could go ask public schools all kinds of stuff. And they'll be like, I don't know, man. I was talking to a public schooler today, and he said, I've read maybe 4 books in my life. I'm like, man, I have read hundreds. Yeah. Well, just because I enjoyed it. Yeah. And you've only read 4? This is what the public school system teaches.
Yeah. I know so many people that are in their 40s now, and when they look back really and try and really quantify what it is that they learned in their 12 years
they really
of
struggle.
School. Yeah, it's like they'll all go to math, but math is almost intuitive to humans. Just give them some Skittles and tell them to sort out half between you and your brother, and they'll figure out how to count. You can, with my sons, I took them on a trip around the country. And on that trip, every day for their homeschooling time, while I was driving down the road with them, we did math. And I took an iPad and a little pen thing that you can draw on the iPad with, and we drew out. We learned things about fractions and geometry and all this kind of stuff. And they pick it up so quick. It's like it's instinctive. People. It's not this huge, terrible struggle to teach a kid math. You just have to understand how they think and put it in a way that they can relate to it. And so,
that's another thing too. Not all kids learn the same way. There's some people who can sit there and read how to do it. Boom, they got it. Not me. I'm a visual learner. I need to see someone work the process a couple of times, show me the formula, and then I can say, oh, X plus Y equals this. That's why. Whereas if I could sit there and look at that problem and read about it all day long, and it wouldn't help me at all. So that is another beauty of homeschooling, is you can develop the method of teaching for each kid in their own unique way.
And there's no one on earth that's going to be able to understand the mind of that child better than their mother or father. There is no one. That teacher will never, that teacher, he or she, may be more experienced and sort of structured in their methodology, but a mother that knows, she can see in her kid's eyes, does he get it or does he not? And she can spend that extra time with them when necessary. That so far outweighs all of the methodologies and the experience that this other teacher has.
And she has the love. And she has the love, which gives her the patience to say, okay, you don't understand? Take a 10-minute break. Go outside. Just go burn some energy for 10 minutes. Come back in, and we'll try it again. Where the teacher's, you don't get it. I'll just redo it.
Yeah, that reminds me of when this whole discussion came up with my grandfather years back. This was like 9 years ago. He was strongly advising me against it, and I said, Granddad, do you think they will get a better education at public school than what my wife can give them at home? He said, No, son, I'm not saying that. Well, then wait a minute. What's the point of school? Education. If they're going to get a better education at home, then who cares about all of the other junk? Because the whole point of school is education. And if I want them to, and that's what I told him, I said, well, we can enroll my son at that time in We can put him in T-ball over here, and he can do all of these other things. And my wife did that stuff. She was very good at making sure that our kids did get to experience that stuff. You know, they did play sports and play on the T-ball teams and all that. And she did. She took them down to the courthouse to meet the judge. She took them to the police station to meet the police officer. She took them to the fire department to meet firemen and see how their jobs work. She took them to the post office so they could see how the U.S. mail system works. She took them to the weather station so that they could see the meteorologist and all that kind of stuff.
And we have never talked about homeschooling before, and I've never even heard these stories. But I'm just going to assume that it ain't just pull up, walk in, this is it, leave, you're done, school's over for the day.
Oh, no. And we have, they got pictures with the mayor. They got pictures with the fire chief. They got pictures with state troopers.
And they probably had to do some studying also.
Well, yes, they did. They learned everything about it. How the fire departments came to be, how they're for the good of the people, how they're funded by the local governments, all of this kind of stuff, how they respond to a call. They got to go up in the fire trucks and all of this kind of stuff. And so they understand and they see these things in a way that most people don't see them. They say things that just make common sense all the time. And, it's 35-year-old people will just be stumped. Like, how did they know that? Well, because they went out there and lived and touched it and talked to them.
See, here's the thing. I've heard people say the reason they don't like homeschooling is because we'll just send your kid to the zoo. Biology or science is done. 2 + 2, what's that? 4. Math's done. Go play Xbox. That's not homeschooling. That's not what you're talking about. That is a true biblically founded, because they're learning the Bible, and I mean it's the way it's supposed to be. It's a true biblical homeschooling. Yeah.
The Bible is the foundation, sort of. That's their main class. But yeah, I mean, my kids love biology. I mean, they love to learn about life and living things. And so we went through some biology books with them, teaching them different things of insect anatomy and all of this kind of stuff and how to identify all this. And then we went out and, we traveled around, but we also did it here on our acres.
Yeah, you don't have to walk. You can walk right out in the backyard and catch 100,000 different types of insects.
We went down to the creeks and we went turning over rocks and stumps, and they all made a huge insect collection.
Yeah, my dad did that with me, and to this day, and I was little. I remember some of it more as I got older, but just doing that, and we weren't even counting that as school. I don't even think we were counting that as school. I don't really remember. He was just doing it. And even to this day, I have a love for outdoors, nature, zoology, animals.
Well, if I ask the question right now to every viewer, do you remember the day in public school when you went in the lab and dissected a frog? Guarantee you every one of them just said yes. Why? Because that was the day they got hands-on schooling. You got that, once a week. That's what I'm trying to say. The earth is the lab, man. My kids go out and, they had to draw the insects. They had to write the notes about them, what they were, what they'd eat, this kind of stuff.
The body parts, legs, head, abdomen.
And so everyone who's public schooled, they remember their day in the lab when they got to dissect that frog. That was one of the coolest things for them. We all did that. I don't know if they still do that anymore, but I guarantee you everyone that ever dissected a frog in public school, they'll never forget that day. They all remember that day because it was a level of cool that they had not experienced. That's what homeschooling is on a regular basis.
It's hands-on experience.
It is. It's not. Yeah, we're not cutting frogs open every day, but there is a hands-on experience level to those things. And now, so they're sitting out there saying, "Well, that's y'all." What about people that don't school their kids? What about people that don't care about their kids? Shouldn't their kids just be put in homeschool? Or what about parents who are not equipped or whatever? They're sitting out there.
You don't have to be someone with a advanced college degree to teach kids. I mean, you can just be a very simple. You can just be somebody who just came out of high school with a diploma and didn't really learn what they were taught.
Your child, you can teach it. Trust me. Everyone can teach their own child. Everyone has a God-given ability in them to teach their own child. You'll be amazed at how, and your child can learn from you better than anyone else because they love you. They believe what you're saying. They think you're the smartest person in the world already. They think you're the strongest man on earth already. They have full confidence in you, and when you tell them something, they can believe it. And when you say, son, this is necessary, they believe you. You can teach your child better than anybody else can. There's no doubt about that. What about, well, here's my sort of philosophy on how do we handle this. Is it always right? Is it always not right? It's so dangerous when we begin waving this word around called law because of something that we disagree with of how that parent is teaching their child or not teaching their child, or we think their child should be learning this or they should be learning that. We don't celebrate diversity anymore. We want everybody to be robotic, think the same, act the same, walk the same, talk the same.
They always preach diversity, and they want everybody to...
Yeah, but they don't want it.
Yeah, they don't want it.
It's not your words coming out of your mouth is what I'm judging you by. It's all your behaviors. You don't want diversity. No, we do not celebrate diversity anymore. We want a bunch of... That's why Common Core came into being, because we want little non-thinking robots out there.
Yeah, whatever the government says, that's word. That's all there is to it. So
all of that to the side for just a minute. All I'm trying to say is waving this word around of it ought to be law. It ought to be law. It ought to be law. Ought to be law. Ought to be law. Everything ought to be a law to someone who doesn't like how someone else is doing. Ought to be law. Ought to be law. You got to take your kids to public school. Ought to be law. They have to learn this. Ought to be law. They have to learn evolution. Ought to be... Man, that's the most foolish thing. It's ridiculously stupid, just to be honest, because the people don't even understand, the people that would take that argument. They don't understand the God-given intrinsic rights to make decisions for your family as a father and as a mother, and they want to intrude on that. It's just foolish. I mean, there are so many things in life that shouldn't be matters of law, is all I'm trying to say. It shouldn't be a matter of law. And I may look out there and see this 24-year-old mama with a 5-year-old son because she got pregnant at 18 or whatever, and think, well, she's not equipped to teach him. She's not this. She's not that. We need to take that boy and make sure he goes to public school every day. But I'm still wrong in that situation. And another thing is, there's nothing that's going to call a man or a woman back to sort of spiritual maturity and growth and seeking God than taking responsibility for their children. Mm-hmm. And so when we take that away from them, we say, you don't have to be responsible for your children, let the state do it. Well, that's also why you have 35-year-old teenagers out there that are 35, but in every other way, they're irresponsible, inconsiderate, arrogant teenager.
Yeah.
Because they don't know how to live in this world. They don't know how to raise kids. They don't know how to behave around kids. What's your thoughts, man? Give me a situation where it's justifiable. I'm not saying there's not any, but I know you have thought about it because people have talked to you about this. I mean, well, let me ask this question. Is there a situation in which you would say that they need to send their kids to public school? I mean, this is way on the spot.
I mean, if we're being honest, I'm sure there are times when the person at this point doesn't have any choice. So maybe that has to be an option for now. But at the same time, I feel like this person should be doing everything in their power to get to a point where they can get them out of there as quickly as possible. Because I don't want to say it's oh, you send your kids to public school, it's a sin. No, I don't think you should. But if there's absolutely no other way, maybe it's a single mom and she's just moved or maybe she doesn't have any living relatives, period. Her husband didn't either. They got married. Well, he just got killed. Now she's got to pick up a job to pay for their bills. I mean, I really don't think I can't, unless she's got friends. Mm-hmm. And I mean, and nowadays, what friend is going to say, I'll teach your kids, just send them over for 8 hours a day. I mean, situations like that, they're really tricky, and there are exceptions, but.
And to me, what you're saying, though, the exception proves the rule, they say. And what that means is, you're right. I give that lady an exception. It's acceptable.
But they're so few and far between.
Right.
That shouldn't even be
an
argument.
That only under extreme cases would you ever seek that. And so really the whole public school system should be reduced down to, honestly, 99 out of 100 kids that are there probably don't have to be there. Mm-hmm. And the local school up here, instead of having 800 kids, should be a place where about
60.
Yeah, 50 to 60 kids go.
And also, you have to remember, even when you have, like, in that situation where you don't have another choice, you need to be aware of they're being exposed to these things, and they're being exposed to who knows what, honestly. Mm-hmm. You need to get them whenever you need to take every minute you have with them, look at it as an opportunity, take advantage of it, and unteach the bad parts of what the school system has taught.
And that's why I started off by trying to frame this in its rightful place. This is a spiritual thing. This is not a matter of actual education, because it honestly is so easy to teach your children the same educational value that they get from public school, to teach them how to read, to teach them, how to spell, how to get context from all of those things about that, to teach them math all the way up even into trigonometry. My wife can do it. She's better at it than I am. I'm a carpenter. I can build a house, but she can teach them trigonometry better than I can. To teach them those things that they get, some American history, all that kind of stuff. It's so, well, I mean, when we found out, when we first made the choice to homeschool 8 years ago, I found out that the state of Alabama requires, this is what they say, to have an equivalent education time of public school, they require 3 hours a day, 180 days a year, which is literally less than half of a year, 3 hours a day. And they say in that time, you'll get the equivalent education of a public school. And I'm thinking, how's that even possible, man? Kids go to school like 260 days a year or something for 8 hours a day. And you're saying less than that and, 3 hours a day. Well, it's because you take out PE, you take out lunchtime, you take out homeroom, take out the school bus rides, you take out the 10 minutes in between every class, then the 5 minutes that the teacher spends getting everybody to sit down and be quiet and say, get your book out, turn in your homework. Basically, the state itself says your kid is only actually learning 3 hours a day for half a year.
That's an awful lot of time when they're not learning to be learning about things they shouldn't
Exactly.
be.
So they're there 8 hours. The state says they're only learning 3. So 5 of those hours, they're learning everything you didn't want them to learn.
And that's if they have a good curriculum that's teaching them there's not one in public school system, a good curriculum that it's teaching evolution, it's teaching gender neutrality and all that junk. So really, from the time they get on that bus or drive out the driveway to the time they get back, their head is being filled with a lot of awful things, if we're just being honest.
Yeah, and I know that it comes down to people just trust other people. They just trust the schools. They think, oh, you're seeing the bad and everything. But it's like sometimes I think, man, you wouldn't even take your dog and drop it off in a situation like that. You got more wisdom about your dog than you do your child. You wouldn't drop your dog off in a pack of 30 other dogs and expect it to come home and be the same, because your dog's going to have to fight for its position in the pack. It's going to be influenced. It's going to come home with different behavioral traits. You wouldn't do that, and yet you'll do it with your kid and not see the spiritual detriment that's happening and all this kind of stuff. And so I've seen when we first started homeschooling Stone, I was worried about it. But I felt so powerfully, though, that it was the right decision that we went on and went through with it. Now, 8 children later, 5 of which are in homeschooling programs, I say it to my wife all of the time. Of any single decision I've ever made in my life, other than giving my life to God and marrying my wife, homeschooling my children is the third. Top 3 best decision I've ever made in my whole life. There's not a doubt in my mind. It has changed their whole future, their whole life, my future, everything about the whole dynamics of my family and our home life and everything. Homeschooling, the fact that we homeschool, the fact that we don't put 5 kids on a bus every morning and send them off to be indoctrinated into a worldview that I don't even believe. I do not believe that we came from monkeys.
And we do not believe that there's more than two genders.
I do
There's
not
male and
believe that
female.
there's more than two genders. I do not believe that you should teach so-called sex education to second grade, third grade, first grade even. I do not believe that exposing your children to as much as possible is the right way to parent. I think that's the exact opposite of what a person should do. So why on God's green earth would I send my kids to learn everything that I don't believe in? And then only to bring them home and try and undo it.
Well, let's put it this way. I watched a guy on YouTube, and he said this, and I really liked it. We're going with what you just said. Imagine you have a very far out there liberal family, like voting for Hillary Clinton, waving the pride flag, atheist. There's no way they're going to send their kids to church.
To church school?
To Sunday
or Christian
school.
Or, yeah,
or even a probably, I'm sure, a Christian school. If someone that far out there will not send their kids to be indoctrinated by someone who believes the exact opposite, why should we, God's people, send our children to the camps of the devil?
Right. And see, that goes back to, I failed to make the point really well earlier when I was talking about law. I'm also not saying that it ought to be a law that your atheist kids should have to go to church. I'm not saying that. No, I'm not going to push what I believe, my faith, onto your children. Stop doing that to me. Mm-hmm. Evolution is a faith. It's a religion. It is not a science. Mm-hmm. It's not a science. They don't even have anything to study. It's one of these, it happened so long ago over a long period of time you can't see it, you just have to believe it kind of thing. Well, hey,
that sounds just like
that's faith. Yeah, that's a faith thing. And so I'm not saying that it ought to be a law that we should teach this, that, or the other in schools, and it ought to be a law that all kids have to go to church. It's your choice. It's my choice if I want to homeschool my kids. So get off my back about it, because I don't want them learning your religious stuff. And that's what happens in public schools. We have all seen it happen. Not to mention, I love sports, but you're right. You put a 15 or 16-year-old boy who, well, I won't even get into the details, but you put him on a football team.
And it'll change you.
And he comes home a different boy.
Mm-hmm.
And we've seen it with our own two eyes. And it's so hard. It takes years, perhaps, to undo what is done in a year or two of all the stuff that goes on in locker rooms of a high school football team. All the stuff that's talked about, all the stuff that's said.
Showed on the phones.
Yeah. And so people out there are like, well, the boy's going to learn at some point. Yeah, that's true.
There's just a better way to learn
There's a better way to learn, and a better person to learn it from, and a better context, and a better setting, and a better discussion from an adult, a father or mother, to talk about these things. And yes, at some point, the parent's job, you are required to have the birds and the bees thing. And it's more than just birds and the bees. You really need to sit down and talk details to some extent when your child is old enough. By the way, 15 is not old enough. 16 is not old enough. There's no point in having that conversation with them until they're actually old enough that it matters to do something about it when they're considering courting or marriage or whatever. But, even that, the world hears me say that, and they just think, oh, these people are just so backward. I'm just telling you, you're blind. You're blind, and you do not see the stuff that we're talking about if you still think in your mind that public school is better spiritually. They're going to hate my guts, Stone, but that's just the truth. If you really think that public school is better spiritually for your kid, you're blind. And if you think that learning math and reading and all this kind of stuff is more important than what they learn spiritually, then you're also blind. Because this is such a temporary life, and we have an eternal hell and an eternal heaven waiting at the end of the road for every single person. And your job, your primary job as a parent, is to make sure your boy ends up in heaven. That's your primary job. Not to make sure that he gets a degree and makes a whole load of money.
Yeah, because a lot of times you hear good Christian or good Christian younger person goes off to college, comes back an atheist. So,
yes. And if your child
there's
is
a reason
atheist,
that's happening.
you failed.
There's a reason that's happening, though. That's what I'm trying to say.
I won't say you failed, because the devil is a powerful enemy, and you may have tried your best. And so I shouldn't say that. You didn't fail. Unless you didn't try your best to get your child right spiritually. If you claim to be a Christian, born-again child of God, a believer in Jesus Christ, God in the flesh, if you claim to believe that the Bible is the Word of God, then you must understand that your child's spiritual education is the most important, longest lasting. You can't put a number on this. It is the most important thing that you can do. It is your number one job as a parent. I don't care if your kid literally can't add 2 + 2. If he's going to heaven, he's going to be just fine. But you may have a genius kid raised up.
Stephen Hawking.
Yeah. And Stephen Hawking is burning in hell right now. Because, he said he was open about it. So, I didn't even mean to get all stirred up on this. But I just know because I've heard it, all of these other arguments. And it's just so hard for me to hear it knowing they just don't see what we're saying. They just do not see it. We talked about it on a past podcast, and how long have we been talking here?
Less than an hour. We're good.
Okay. Well, we need to wrap it up here in just a minute. But on past podcasts, we've talked about this. The world, even the church world in America doesn't care about fornication anymore. So you got a 17-year-old boy and a 17-year-old girl sleeping together. That's what kids do. What are you so tore up about? Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? They have no care. They're spiritually dead as a hammer.
Well, one of the Ten Commandments is thou shalt not commit adultery.
Yeah, thou shalt not
They
commit
probably
adultery.
don't have the version that. They probably have a version that leaves that out, but still.
Dude, it wouldn't even matter if it was penciled or pinned down in stone on the 10 Commandments. It's a whole teaching of the Bible. That's what I'm saying is the parents, there is no real caution about sin anymore. And a person that shows caution about sin is considered a fool, a radical, an extremist, perhaps even a terrorist. They hate my guts when I post things on Facebook or talk to people about, hey, you probably want to be careful about letting your kid do that. Well, what's the problem? Well, because it's a sinful thing and sin destroys lives. The wages of sin is death. That's why I'm trying to help you save the life of your child. I'm trying my best to get through to you. And you're just not seeing it. And they just don't care about sinful things. And that's why, Stone, they don't care to send their kid to public school where they know there's pornographic stuff. But yeah, that's the first time I was ever exposed to pornography was in the boys' locker room at school. Mm-hmm. They're passing the magazines around, My parents don't even know that. They were raising me up in church and sent me there where I learned that stuff.
Not to mention, it just gets the whole dating from 5-year-olds all the way up. And there's a reason, like I said this in another podcast, there is a reason that over 50% of marriages end in divorce. It's because you take 2 kids and you train them. It didn't work out, break up. Didn't work out, break up. Didn't work out, break up. So when they're 25 and married and their lives are hell because they don't have God in the center of their life, and so Satan is destroying their family, well, we'll just break up and start again. And they'll be married. You see people all the time. I've been married 60-year-old, been married 4 times. It's like, what happened to the days? It's sad that whenever I hear somebody say I've been married 50 years, I'm like, that's awesome, because you just don't hear it anymore.
Yeah, it's definitely.
And the public school system is a huge part to blame for that.
Yeah, but see, people don't understand that connection.
Understand that, yeah.
They don't realize that that's what your kid is learning. That's what your child is learning. They're learning how to fit in and blend into a society that is made of a group of 30 10-year-olds in the same room. That's what they're learning, or 15-year-olds or 16-year-olds or whatever. They're learning how to have relationships. They're learning how to compete for sort of importance or popularity or dominance in a pack of kids their age. They're learning all of these things, and it's changing their natures and all this kind of stuff, because for the most part it's completely unguided. And even when it is guided by a teacher, it's spiritually unguided. And there was a point I was going to make earlier and I didn't make it, but it doesn't matter. It just left me. Maybe it'll come back to me. You're right, Stone. The things that our kids learn is not just what we tell them. It's what we show them. It's what they see. And I want them to see that. I want them to realize, that's what I was going to say earlier. If you were to ask the Christian mother and father, is there more sin at school than home? Is there more chance that your child will end up involved in fornication at public school or at homeschool? Every single one's going to say, oh, definitely public school.
That's enough reason right there to say.
Boom. Okay, then. Do you care?
Homeschooled.
Yeah. Do you care about whether or not your son accidentally gets a girl pregnant? Homeschool your kids, man. It's so important. And then there was one more thing I was going to say. Oh, what about this argument? Oh, but we want our Christian kids to influence the public school kids.
I actually thought about that, and I thought, nah, I won't go there. I mean, like you said, influence is the biggest. How'd you word that?
Well, it's the way that children learn and adapt and fit in. And
when you I mean, first of all, let's look at the Bible. Did Jesus ever send children out to be, help me out here,
did he send them out
preachers?
To be, well, children? No. Young men? Yes and no. It's a complicated question. That's probably not even the right way to approach it, because that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about people sticking their kid on a bus daily to go to a state-run school. This is something totally different than perhaps what Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego went through. You know, were Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego a lot in Babylon? Sure, they sure were. But the thing is...
But they weren't 8 years old either.
They were young. They were young men. They were probably, I don't know, perhaps early 20s. I don't really know the ages. I can't remember for sure.
By then you graduated anyway.
Yeah. All I'm saying is this. We have tried that experiment, and let me tell you.
It doesn't work.
It don't work.
And to me...
We failed.
When they fall back on that, it sounds to me like they're trying to defend their reasons for putting their kids in public school. And so they just say, oh, throw the guard card and just say that works.
Yeah.
It sounds like an excuse.
Well, I know a lot of sincere mothers and fathers out there that are going to hear this and hate me for it. They actually don't think that they can teach their kids. They have no self-confidence, and they don't realize what I have said. That I don't care if your IQ is 100, which is very low. You can still teach your child better than the state schools can. They don't realize that. They have no confidence in themselves. They have all these fears. They think, oh, they really are, in their minds, at the end of the day, they have sorted out to where they're doing the best for their child. They really believe this school system can do better for them than what I can do, and it really is I'm making this decision for their betterment. I know that that's their real heart. They truly are sincere in that. All I'm saying is the problem is you're weighing out the wrong things. That's the problem. If all we weighed out was that, then maybe you're right. But you totally forgot to weigh out all the spiritual things. And you can teach your child spiritually 1 billion times better than the public school. And they all know that.
And if you want your kid to be shining a lot, you don't have to throw them to the wolves. You can do something with them where you are still in control. Maybe start a little ministry where you're just handing out tracts in public. You're in control. You get to say, this influence stays, this one goes. Mm-hmm. This is allowed, this is not allowed. Versus 8 hours a day gone, come back in house school, it was good. I mean,
yeah, if you really want your child to be able to shine a light and have the opportunity, and maybe you have a heart for...
Let them learn from watching you.
Right. For all the other public school kids, get your kid out of school, homeschool him. And start a podcast or something, influence them without contact every single day. Influence them by inviting them to church, going to the public school or whatever, handing out Valentine's Day cards or whatever. I don't even think I'd do that, but I'm just saying there's a lot of other ways to approach it than to put your little 9-year-old boy who don't have the understanding on that bus and let him be devoured by the devil, because that's what's happening. There's just so much better ways to do it. I feel like we didn't cover so many things that I could have talked about, because my wife and I studied this issue heavily 9 years ago. I spent almost a year learning different teaching methods throughout history. Stuff called the trivium, the quadrivium. How did Plato learn? How did Aristotle learn? How did Alexander the Great learn? Because he learned from Aristotle. Stuff that public school actually never teaches that I do teach my kids. The laws of logic, critical thinking skills, identifying logical fallacies, all this stuff that you don't learn in public school, my kids do learn. And I also looked at how other countries handle their sort of state-run school systems. And it's just helpful to know the American model is just that. It's a model. It's not the height of the best education any human being has ever gotten, the best way, and it's been perfected through centuries. No, that's not it. It's a compulsory model. That's all it is. And there's many other ways to go about it. And there's many other ways that produce better outcomes. But we're running out of time. We probably need to talk on this again and tell them so many other things. But, what do you think? Close us out.
Yeah, I think we definitely need to do a part 2. And we still got several topics we're wanting to get onto, like abortion. I want to do one on gun control because, I love guns.
There's a parallel between the abortion issue and the public school issue. Because the people want to try and give you this extreme situation. This 6-year-old boy on the back streets of New York, life would be so much better for him in public school. And so they give you these far out extremes to try and persuade you that public school is better, like they do with abortion. They're like, what about the 17-year-old girl who her dad messed with her, whatever, she got pregnant, and those situations, they need to be dealt with very delicately, but they still don't undermine the ethical principle of no, homeschooling is better and no abortion, period. You can't ever, 2 wrongs don't make a right. We learned that from time we was 3 years old. Killing a baby it doesn't
help
atone
nobody
for the sins of the father, So anyway, sorry, that's just one more thing I thought about. Yeah, we want to do a part 2. I really think so. We got other stuff we're going to do. What else?
Well, by the time they're watching this video, all of our other podcasts will be loaded. But we apologize for taking so long. We're both procrastinators.
Well, we've done the shows.
They are just not uploaded.
Yeah, we recorded the episodes. We just have super busy lives. We do.
I'm kind of a master procrastinator.
Yeah, and I'm just lazy. I'm just lazy these days.
That's what I guess that's what it boils down to for me. Is
well, we have we're basically doing 3 things a night together.
Not to mention working full time.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, I'm done, Stone. You got anything you want to add to it?
No, but I'm looking forward to part 2.
I know what we said is hard, and most people
done cut this thing off.
This off. But if you're still out there and you're still thinking about this and you're weighing it out, I didn't want to hurt your feelings if I did. I don't mean to be abusive. I really want you to make the choice, if you're in debate at all, homeschool your kids. And if you're sitting there already homeschooling them feeling like you're failing, you're not.
Even if they are not getting the best education,
the fact that you're homeschooling them, you're succeeding.
You're succeeding because they are being far more protected than they ever would be at public school. Because once you let them walk out that door and get on the bus, they don't have a guardian who cares about them anymore.
Yeah, and see, that's all the way back to it's a spiritual thing. That's why you're succeeding, is because you're protecting your child spiritually. What they learn about other things in this world, that's good and all that. But I've said it so many times, I would so much rather know my son is saved and a faithful follower of God than to think he was Bill Gates. You know what I mean? So you're succeeding. Good job if you're homeschooling them. Keep it up. If you're weighing it out, don't weigh it out any longer. The scales are completely tipped to the one side. Homeschool your kids. We'll see you guys later.